Let's take a close look at the timeline that the controllers of this planet have in mind for us, and then I'll show you what we can do about it. Hi, I'm Saratoga Ocean. This is going to be a two-part video series. In this video, I'm going to expose the plan and the timeline that the controllers have in mind for our planet. And then in my next video, which will be part 2, I will show you how to create your own timeline so that you don't have to be a part of the controllers' zombie apocalypse. Now, I look at this entire situation from an extraterrestrial viewpoint, and I encourage you to do the same. You will be amazed at what your higher mind will reveal to you when you stop making Earth your only point of reference. So let's begin with what the controller's ultimate goal is, and then we can talk about what their likely plan is and their timeline to get us there. The controller's ultimate goal is a complete AI takeover of this planet and of all life on it. Now, the controllers are a consortium of human, extraterrestrial, and interdimensional entities. This goal is being enacted via a very sophisticated long-term plan that has also been done elsewhere in this universe. Now, the timeline to reach this goal has had many phases. Its most significant beginning goes all the way back to about 10,000 years ago with the advent of agriculture and the domestication of animals. The next most significant phase occurred during the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century when we humans were newly cast as industrialized slaves. And then in the late 1800s, compulsory government schooling was started. Now, I think it was after World War II when a significant breakdown of the family began to be initiated. This was the start of a longer-term process of transforming the larger purpose of humans when it came to the controller's long-term agenda. And interestingly, it was also during and after World War II, with the unfortunate invention of the nuclear bomb, that we started seeing a tremendous influx of extraterrestrial activity around our planet. Now, the biggest event that has occurred so far when it comes to the larger AI agenda was the creation of the internet. The internet has a very interesting name. It was originally called the World Wide Web. So you have the words web and net. This is not an accident. The internet is and always has been a trap. It was ultimately designed to trap, ensnare, and control first our minds and then our lives. Now, at first, this all seemed so wonderful because it was like a gigantic, free, awesome global system of communication. It was like a global system of free, unlimited creativity where we could all connect worldwide. But that's how they set the trap. I mean, how could we resist something as amazing and incredible as the internet? So they got us all in there, and then they got us all on social media. And once we were consumed by this web, they could use algorithms and spying technology to completely herd us in any direction they wanted to. Which is why I always say it is truly imperative to think for yourself. So with the internet, they finally had a way to completely control our minds. And then to make sure that we all stayed connected 24/7, they made sure that nearly every human on Earth carried a smartphone to keep them attached on an electronic leash to the World Wide Web. I mean, most of us now see our phones as a literal lifeline, which is exactly according to their plan. Now, none of us should be surprised by the current level of censorship. This was absolutely planned all along. See, the internet had to be free and open in the beginning just to get us all in there and completely hooked up. And once everyone was inside and completely consumed inside this giant AI brain, which is what the internet is, they shut the gates. And that is what we are experiencing today. So I want to share an interesting little story with you that I read in a book quite a while ago. I can't remember the book, but the story is fascinating. So the person who's writing the book was telling a story about a famous wealthy industrialist way back, I guess, during the Industrial Revolution. Never said the person's name, but apparently this guy had the most incredible exotic zoo of animals, and people were like totally amazed. Like, how did you capture these animals? I mean, this is amazing. So what he said was, well, it's easy. He said what he did was he had native people that he would hire. And he said, so what I would do is I would put food for the animals inside an open field, and the animals would be a little tentative at first and reserved, but eventually they would come and eat the food. So once the animals got used to having the food provided for them, he said then he had the natives put up one piece of a fence not too far from the food. And the animals saw this and they would be, well, that made them a little nervous, but they went anyway and tried the food. Nothing bad happened. So they kept coming to get the food that was being regularly provided. And then he said, so what he would do is every week he would add another piece of the fence, and the animals would get used to it. They'd eat the food. Everything would be fine. Eventually, he had the entire area enclosed by a fence, except for one opening that had a gate on it. And he said the animals had gotten so accustomed to this fence that they would just march right on in, get the food, and then go out. So he said one day, all the animals came in, they ate the food, and then he shut the gate and locked it, and that's how he trapped the animals. The way the story goes is someone said to him, wow, that's just amazing. How did you ever come up with such an idea? And he said, oh, it was easy. I do this with humans all the time. That's pretty weird, huh? Because this guy was obviously one of the controllers. So I thought that was an interesting story because it kind of reminds me of what they've done with the internet. So we are now living in the end game of this long-planned AI timeline. So let's talk about what that means. The past year and a half represents one of their main attempts to start breaking down our human species. Now, the way they're doing this is not very complicated, but because of the way that they first set us up in this global web of mind control, they were able to pull off the most amazing feat worldwide. Almost overnight, they had us shutting down every aspect of our lives, wearing masks on our face and staying far away from each other. Now, the excuse for all of this really doesn't matter. What matters is that they actually got us to actively participate in a complete breakdown of our species from which we may never fully recover on a collective basis. I don't think they could have pulled this off globally as fast as they did if it wasn't for the internet. And now it's reached a point where we have been divided into categories and to camps, and we willingly go along with that. I mean, the use of critical thinking skills is becoming less and less every single day. Less and less are we inclined to see each other as individual, unique, creative human beings with our own special, unique personalities, our own beliefs, and our own ideas. Instead, we tend now to see ourselves as, well, what camp are you in politically, and what camp are you in when it comes to the health issue? And it's very superficial, and it's just very, very weird. What's happening is the AI brain is telling us what to think via the news and via social media. Now, the next phase of this timeline is for AI to control our bodies, our lives, and all of our movements. And ultimately, AI will decide if we live or die. It's all going to depend on how useful we are to this very cold manifestation of reality. See, AI does not feel and it does not have a heart. And that's important to remember. See, when you understand that, you will not be so confused about what is going on. So that is the very basic timeline that this planet is on right now. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is I want to give you an opportunity to transcend it, and as I said in the beginning, take an extraterrestrial perspective so that you can see it from above and have perspective, have a perspective that is going to empower you, empower your evolution, and give you the ability to remove yourself from this timeline and set forth on a completely different one of your choosing. Now, I need to bring up the fake alien invasion again because I think I finally figured out what this is all about. And it's definitely related to the controller's future timeline, which is an extension of the timeline that I just described. So to understand that, it's very important to recognize how important war is to the controllers. And it's also very important to them in terms of how they have been controlling us. So let's now take a sneak peek at their blueprint of control. So 3 of the most important things to the controllers are fossil fuels, the money system, and war. All 3 of these things work together to enable their ability to maintain us as slaves. Now, the money system is used to keep us in survival, to keep us in fear, and to direct all of our activities. It's basically used to keep us contained in a very limited version of our ability to live, and to make sure that most people do not acquire the level of abundance that they would probably desire. And the use of fossil fuels also keeps us very much under their control, because this way they can control our use of energy and keep it relatively underdeveloped. And I also want to mention that I think the idea of windmills and solar panels and all that kind of stuff is just a big distraction to make us think that they are doing something about it. I mean, honestly, windmills are really kind of a dumb idea. See, these controllers know full well that there are highly advanced energy technologies that are available, but they can't let that out because they would lose a huge measure of their control over us, and would also probably really mess up their money system. And then there's war. See, they must always have an enemy to keep us in fear and to keep their giant money machine of war going. Now, they have a big problem with their current agenda of having a one-world totalitarian government. See, they don't really want to have individual countries anymore. And it's so funny because if you really like the idea of your country, you're going to have the derogatory term of nativist attached to you as though you're some kind of a bad person. And what's the connotation of nativist? It kind of sounds like, oh, well, you're just sort of a primitive, tribal sort of person, right? That word was chosen very, very carefully a long time ago as part of the plan. So basically, if you're going to have a planetary government, a centralized government that controls the entire planet, you can't really have separate countries anymore. But if there are no countries, then how do you keep the war machine and the idea of enemies going on from there? I wonder what the solution to that might be. Now, you can just imagine these guys sitting around at their important meeting, just brainstorming all of this and how they're going to solve this problem, right? And then, someone might say, I know, we can have an enemy from outer space. We can have interplanetary space wars. Yeah, that's the way to go. Don't you just love the way these people think? And thus we have a new branch of the military that was just born called Space Force. Now, why did they pick such a lame title? I mean, you'd think they would have called it Galactic Space Force or something like that. That sounds a lot more powerful. I mean, Space Force, it's just so lame sounding. Anyway, I digress. So we have Space Force, and now that is followed up in perfect timing by the Pentagon's new UFO report that is supposed to be delivered to the Senate Intelligence Committee in June. So you kind of get the idea how they're trying to move their war machine from the planet out into space. I mean, I saw in a video of an interview last week or something of a defense guy who was talking about this report and talking about all the UFOs that the military is suddenly disclosing. And this guy was like really frantic, and he was saying, we're under siege by these things. We're under siege. How do you like the terminology? Under siege, right? And he said, well, it could be other countries, but satellite images show that it's probably extraterrestrial, or that it could be extraterrestrial. So put that together with his use of the term under siege, and I think you can kind of start to see where this is going. So maybe they're going to transition from fighting wars against other countries to fighting wars against the evil, threatening extraterrestrials, aliens. See, here's what we need to understand. These guys are all about war and total control. They want to end the diversity of different governments in different countries and have only one planetary government that controls everybody. But that means there's no more war on the planet because there's no one left to fight. So now I think they want to expand their war machine into space. They probably think they can have bigger, better, and more expensive wars in our solar system and maybe even in the galaxy. So this could be perhaps one of the main reasons for them to stage a fake alien invasion, to show us why we need to have a one world government that controls everything and why they need to expand their massive war machine into space. So I'm hoping that after just considering all of this, that we can begin to see that this planet is no longer a viable touchstone or reference point for us to have the perspective that we need as human beings to evolve at the most powerful level that we are capable of. Because it's really time that we start to expand our consciousness. And if they're going to expand this craziness from this planet into space, then we, as individual human beings, we need to expand our consciousness in terms of how we see our evolution, so that they don't get so far ahead of us that we just get completely crushed and we become unable to evolve at all for a very, very long time. And in my next video, which is going to be part 2, I'm going to show you specifically what it is that we as individuals can do about this. But I just want to point out a couple of additional things. Do you realize that they have already set us up to believe that the Pentagon is the authority on extraterrestrials and their spacecraft? The Pentagon is the military. All they do is create and fight wars. How is it that we are allowing them to be the authority about what is happening in space? I mean, that's insane. I mean, are we going to let a massive organization whose only purpose is war define for us the universe as it relates to our planet? See, these are the kinds of things that we need to start paying very close attention to. Because if we're going to let them be our ultimate authority, then we are responsible for that. We're the ones who are going to get to live with those consequences. And all we're going to achieve is just ensuring that we stay trapped in this ungodly situation that we find ourselves in. Now, they might really intend to fight extraterrestrials. Is that how you want to see us enter the cosmos as a civilization? As just a bunch of primitive, crazy people who want to destroy things and kill people? So how do we stop them from being the ultimate authority in terms of how we see the universe? It's really simple. Just don't listen to them and see them for what they are. They are a primitive civilization who thrives on war, on control, and on death. You can choose to extract yourself from that civilization in your mind. It's all about what is in your mind. See, if they control your mind, they also control your destiny. It's really just that simple. So I encourage you to stand back, just observe them, and see them for what they are. They are primitive and they are unevolved. And stop identifying with them. I strongly encourage you not to identify yourself as a part of their civilization. That is literally your first step in finding freedom and in re-entering the cosmos as a galactic citizen. See, what I'm describing to you is an actual timeline split. That is why I'm referring to that as a civilization. Do you want to be a part of that civilization and that timeline? Or are you interested in evolving as a galactic human being and setting forth on a completely different timeline that is by your own creation? Now stay tuned for my next video on Friday for part 2 of this topic, when I will give you some more details about how to extract yourself from the controller's timeline. So be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss that video. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it out with anyone else who you think would find this interesting. And with that, I'm sending you so much love, light, and high vibrational energy. And I so look forward to seeing you in the next video. Namaste.